It looks like it is a curtain call for the Roys at NDTV. Only a miracle after the 5th of December can ensure their hold over the NDTV board, and that is very unlikely. In the rise and fall of Prannoy Roy, there are elements of a Greek tragedy. Here was this man who spearheaded the news broadcasting revolution in the country almost single-handed. And here is this man today, a lonely figure, out in the cold, out of favor, and out of sync with the new India and the ruling dispensation. In every tragedy, the main question to be asked is, what was the turning point that led to the downfall? Shakespeare's Macbeth was a great general, but he eventually failed because he could not live up to his own potential. Likewise with Prannoy Roy. His hubris caught up with him. He promised so much, but in the end, he and his channel stood out for their one-sided narration of news and events and unrelenting bitterness against the ruling dispensation in the country. And there were very few takers left for that. Like all great stories that have a moral underpinning to it, let us start at the beginning. Let me give you a bit of a ringside view of how and why NDTV came into existence. And even as early as that time, the seeds for its ignominious fade out today were sown. I use the word ringside view for a reason. NDTV shot into national prominence in 1989 because Prannoy brilliantly organized the country's first ever national elections broadcast from multiple locations. It was a joint Doordarshan NDTV production. It was trailblazing and a grand success. I was then a news correspondent with DD Doordarshan News, and I was part of that path-breaking coverage, reporting from Jalandhar as Juggi Bhasin. Remember also, NDTV then was broadcasting from Doordarshan's platform. The question, which many people would be curious about, would be how a private entity got the rights to broadcast from a government platform. There is a story behind that. But before I tell you that, let me extend a warm welcome to all viewers of the CAA show. CAA is Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. To watch our show, press the big red subscriber button on your screen, and subscription, as all of you know, is completely free. In the late 80s, a bunch of senior bureaucrats and media advisors to the government, and all very close to the ruling dispensation of the day, that is the Congress, felt a sophisticated alternative to Doordarshan was the need of the hour. The idea being that the arrival of such a kind of programming would enhance the electoral prospect of the ruling dispensation of the day. They wanted a program and an anchor with sympathies to the ruling party to kickstart the new sophisticated alternative. That is how Prannoy Roy, a professor of econometrics at the Delhi School of Economics, was brought into play. I still remember there was a lot of heartburning in Doordarshan those days at this decision. People were angry as to why this professor from D School was being favored to start a new program on the Doordarshan platform, especially when the medium was not open for other players. More ranks followed when the terms of the agreement between Prannoy and Doordarshan were leaked out. It turned out Prannoy's flagship program, World This Week, was using clips from an international news agency called Viz News, which were cheaply available at rock-bottom rates for Doordarshan or anyone else for that matter who wanted to buy them. But Prannoy charged the same clips from Doordarshan at astronomical rates, and to boot it, he was paid in foreign exchange. Goes without saying, Prannoy made windfall profits from this arrangement and built his media empire in double quick time. I have given you this background to tell you the reasons why NDTV was birthed and the arrangement to get it going. There is a school of thought that all this was not kosher. Many also felt back then that Prannoy Roy grew at Doordarshan's expense. NDTV blossomed into sophisticated programming, while Doordarshan News programming metasized and started resembling NDTV's ugly cousin. Prannoy made full use of the opportunity given to him and brought to the small screen a degree of sophistication and professionalism that had not been seen before. His election coverages and predictions were spot on, and it raised the stature of the medium. The World This Week increased viewership week after week. That was the heyday of NDTV, and Prannoy Roy appeared unstoppable. He expanded his media outreach and branched off Doordarshan with his own platform. He formed his own media empire with hand-picked anchors who were sons and daughters of well-known bureaucrats and senior journalists. Many of these anchors were closely indebted to the ruling Congress party of the day. Prannoy was at the pinnacle of his ambition and powers and outreach and networking. I use the word hubris in the beginning. Hubris quite literally means pride. Prannoy Roy at the height of his powers forgot that from the top there is only a climb down below. At the top, people forget that closeness to any one political entity makes you an enemy of the other side. Parroting your own brand of politics on your channel, which can best be described as secular, left, liberal, activist spaghetti, is a recipe for disaster. You then run the risk of being seen as a biased party, a channel and a medium for distorting news and playing out someone else's agenda. All these contradictions caught up with Prannoy Roy and his brand of news broadcasting. Plus, the news field had considerably widened by then, and there were all kinds of players in the field. The hegemony of NDTV as a sophisticated news broadcaster was coming to an end. The knives, in a metaphorical sense, were out for Prannoy and his NDTV. We might never know what all happened behind the scenes for a new entity to begin the task of wresting NDTV's management control out of Prannoy and Radhika's hands. I can only comment, though, on a reality we all witness in real time over the years. Prannoy made NDTV completely one-sided and perpetually hostile to the ruling dispensation of the day, that is the BJP government. All sense of objectivity was lost in the broadcasting. Not a day, not a program, not a news bulletin would pass muster if it did not criticize and pillory the government of the day, even to the extent of inventing stories hostile to the BJP government. It would appear as if Prannoy was nursing a grudge against the BJP government. I earlier talked of pride. Pride sometimes blindsides you of the reality. And in my opinion, Prannoy Roy could not grasp or accept the new reality of a new India under Modi. He could not understand that Modi had led his party to power in 2 general elections on the back of a huge tidal wave of popularity. His organization continued to target Modi and his government on the principles of an age and time gone by and ideas buried in the sand. To make matters worse, his channel continued to peddle a spurious, misplaced sense of morality echoed in their tagline, "Sach dikhate hain hum." This was the same channel birthed, as I have explained earlier, in controversial and some would even say dubious circumstances. And along with this shrill preacherness, they would cleverly pillory the present government on each policy and even finding faults when none existed. It came to a point when Prannoy threw caution to the winds. In that now infamous press meet at the Press Club of India, he invited the National Press Corps to rave and rant against the government for pursuing income tax cases against him. In my opinion, Prannoy fell from grace that day. He converted his income tax troubles as an issue of freedom of the press. If this was not a case of extreme entitlement, then what else was it? This has been the problem with him and NDTV for a long time. Over the years, he staffed NDTV with anchors all schooled to rail and rant against the BJP and the government of the day. Leadership in a sense, flows from the top. In NDTV's case, top down, everyone, with hardly any exceptions, made light of the mandate given to the present government, the trust imposed by millions and millions in the Modi government. The anchors, night after night, made a virtue of mocking Modi and the so called right wing government, displaying unmitigated arrogance and I know it all attitudes. The thing Prannoy Roy forgot was that a sophisticated veneer and an upper class English speaking skills can only get you so far. If you are unbalanced and unrelenting, hostile in your broadcasting, then others can play a similar game or worse. And who was he railing against? A government that is the present government which never forgets. A government that knows of your background, your political leanings, and the bias you carry to the newsroom. It is only a matter of time before he was raided on his weak spots and forced to exit his own shop. Whether the Adani takeover is inspired or not, I wouldn't know. And frankly, it does not matter. All that matters is that those who live on the sword of favoritism of one political dispensation eventually die of it, in a metaphorical sense, one day. And so on this note, I come to the end of this episode of the CAA Show. I hope you really enjoyed this particular episode. If you like a show, do subscribe to us. And on this note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.